Very nice. Very nice.
Just close the show on that, huh?
That's right.
Very good.
Applause.
Yeah, that's pretty tricky. I'll look forward to that jumping in throughout the day based upon what people have to say, huh? Oh, good.
We can just get our own laugh. If anybody else doesn't care, we'll just.
The best part of that, Tom? It's not the laugh track. It's the look on your face laughing at the laugh track.
That's right. I like the laugh track.
That's good. I'm happy that you like that. That's fantastic. Good. How are you today?
Good.
Yeah. Don't get sick. It's hard.
No, I'm not getting sick. I've got too much travel coming up, and Lauren won't let me even go to the gym because she says that there's so many people sick right now, and you don't want to get sick before your travel. So I'm not even going to the gym.
A great excuse.
That's right.
Mike, there's sick people there. Oh,
there's sick people everywhere. I have never seen so many sick people all at one time. So
I'm on day 4 of antibiotics, just trying to recover. Still have a cough. I got hit started feeling a little weird last Friday afternoon, and then Saturday it was horrible or bad, and then Sunday it was horrible, and Monday horrible, and then the rest of the week was a normal work week. But so fun. So take care of yourself, people. Anyways, that's not what people tuned in for. But you've got 2 straight weeks of travel coming up. It's not your norm or what you like.
No, it's not my norm or what I like. So I have to stay healthy. But
off to Houston Monday with me to go see a great new customer, and then you're off for some high-tech AI wizardry and agent work in New York City with some of our team next week.
That's right. The week after.
Sorry about that. Good. Well, anyways, let's check in with everybody and welcome everyone that's with us today. Good morning, Tom, and everybody else that's tuned in this morning. Had a nice lunch with Tom last week, actually. Great to be with him. But I'm Kevin Brown. I'm here with my lifelong friend, business partner, and co-host of our show, Tom Burton. We get together here on the Around the Horn and Wholesale Distribution podcast every Friday morning. We do the best we can to be here every Friday. We always say, unless someone's in the hospital, on an airplane or on a planned vacation, we still do our show. So we enjoy being together with you. Today is number 177. Tom, a few years back in your career, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, did you ever think that you would be hosting 177 episodes of a podcast?
All the time.
You did? Great. It's awesome because it was not even remotely on my radar. So it's good. Glad you're so forward.
I it's 177. That's what I would lay in bed thinking. If I go lay at
what's the number? How long do you think we can do this?
1,000. Let's go for 1,000.
1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long way away.
Okay. It's all right.
There's 52 weeks in a year.
Yeah, it's okay. 20 more years.
I'm not sure we're going to be alive.
Yeah, well, it's okay. We'll turn it over to somebody else.
Right. Tom and Kevin in their 80s.
Yeah, from the nursing
chatting on Friday mornings. We'll have to make the show a little later. So, very good. Anyways, as we said, as I digress so quickly, we get together every week and we talk about the news of the week, things in the supply chain, the economy, mergers and acquisitions, AI, technology, robotics, all of the different things that are impacting wholesale distributors and manufacturers. So we look at the things that have happened throughout the week and how they relate to wholesale distribution and manufacturing, the audience that Tom and I work with every day as well. So we look forward to that. If you're with us live today, please feel free to comment and join in. If you're listening, though, on the recorded podcast, this will be recorded later today on Spotify and Apple and Odyssey and iHeart and all of the podcast platforms. We would love to have you get the newsletter that we'll be talking about here today. And that newsletter, again, is called Around the Horn in Wholesale Distribution. And that goes out each week to about 10,000 or so people. We'd love to have you join that as well. 3 simple ways to get the newsletter. The newsletter will go out every Friday morning, bright and early. You can email us directly at hello@leadsmarttech.com. You can as well send us a note through LinkedIn. If you jump onto LinkedIn, you can search for Around the Horn and Wholesale Distribution. You can go to the Lead Smart Technologies page as well, where there's a link for that. And follow the podcast, subscribe to the newsletter, and follow us at Lead Smart Technologies as well. And then we have a website for the podcast, and that is www.aroundthehornpod.com. So we'd appreciate you continuing to follow us. And again, if you like what you hear, the best thing that you could do for us in return would be to share the newsletter with friends, like, subscribe, follow whichever format or platform you're on, and that'll help those algorithms see what we're doing and get that out to more and more people for us. So we're appreciative of that. But each week, a lot of work goes into this show. We have a front-end person, Lily, who gets us all ready for this, and Tom and I do our preparation, but we have our good friend John Taylor and his agency that takes care of all the post-show work, and that's not inexpensive. So we have to have a sponsor for this show. That sponsor is the company that Tom and I work for, LeadSmart Technologies. Tom, why don't you tell us what LeadSmart does, since I've been talking so much already?
Funny you should ask. I was on a call yesterday, and somebody was asking about LeadSmart, and they're like, LeadSmart, I keep hearing CRM, but it seems like you're not really CRM. I said, oh, thank you. We must be doing a better job. But, what I told them is I said, hey, we start with a platform, and we have a platform that allows us to aggregate and centralize data from a lot of sources in your organization, so you don't have all the silos that you're looking for. And then we have some solution apps and agents that are built on top of that for very relevant business things, whether it's revenue expansion or forecasting or quote management, or, and there are some basic CRM capabilities along the way, but that's really kind of an afterthought, if you will. It's certainly not the core product. And then I said, and then on top of that, you have we've invested in really having some really great experts on our team that help you get from here to there. And how do you really leverage that centralized data and these solution apps and agents and AI and so forth to kind of really change the business outcomes? So, and as maybe most of people know, is we're built on the same cloud platform as Salesforce. We have a partnership with Salesforce, and we have been invited as one of 4 partners in the whole world to come to New York. I think you mentioned that, in a couple of weeks, and show off what we're doing with the platform and how we're using these solution apps and all this kind of stuff, because it's very unique and novel. And so anyway, I thought it was kind of a better explanation than some of the ideas that maybe people get off of our outdated website.
Well, it's interesting you say that. So I think the core of things is that right now, wholesale distributors and manufacturers both are getting inundated with AI tools and other technology tools that we sometimes refer to as point products. And those are valuable and important, but they don't tell a story of the business. They tell a singular story of the business. So historically, distributors and manufacturers both, and really even more so with distributors, because they have so much more data coming in, they have silos across their business. And those silos data gets trapped. So when you use a unified platform, like you were describing earlier, this what we do at LeadSmart, is you bring that ERP data, that marketing automation data, the e-commerce data, the other data within your business, the structured and unstructured data, you bring those into a central location where you also have that human information, the data that I call it the interpersonal data that lives inside of what we call our smart CRM platform. And you bring all of that together in a single unified data platform and use AI against that to make business decisions versus old school CRM of typing in some notes and so forth, or, hey, we just rely as the holy grail on our ERP or so forth. So that's what we're trying to do at LeadSmart.
Making business decision, it's augmenting and enabling things to occur as well. And that's one of the reasons we were invited to this thing in New York, is they're very impressed with some of the things we're doing to augment, and I won't go so far as automate, but maybe on the verge of automation of some of the things that people want to do day in and day out, especially in the sales and marketing arena. So
good. Well, let's dive into the news. That's why we're here.
Yep.
So if you're listening again in on the recorded podcast, we just popped up our newsletter, issue 177 of Around the Horn and Wholesale Distribution. We start every week with a section called Economy and Supply Chain. So Tom, first article here was from CNBC talking about tariff revenue soars more than 300% as the U.S. awaits Supreme Court decision. Any takeaways on that to start with?
Well, there's a few takeaways on that one. So tariff revenues are growing rapidly. continuing to grow. It's actually affecting positively our deficit that they're seeing there.
Finally, huh?
Interestingly, this morning, which I know we wouldn't have had in the article because the CPI came out this morning.
Yeah.
And it was lower than expected, 2.4%. In fact, it's lower, or it's the same place it was in March before the tariffs started last April. So you could argue, right, that the CPI hasn't really increased, at least the consumer price index has not increased year over year due to tariffs, because a year ago it was the same amount that was there.
Yeah, we're what are we, month and a half away from what the anniversary of Liberation Day.
Right. I don't know if it was in this article or another one. There was one they were talking about that the average consumer will see about a $1,700 impact over the course of a year due to tariffs.
Yeah, that was in a different article later on, but yes, that's roughly
and that may be true, but that may have been offset by other, fuel prices and other things dropping along the way. So, there's other things that could offset that amount. So it doesn't show up that way. But I did wanted to point out one thing in the article here, going back to our discussions that we've had. It says the High Court hasn't ruled yet, which we know the Supreme Court hasn't ruled yet. And there's concern in the White House that a negative ruling could force the U.S. into reimbursing the duties collected so far. This would put a major dent in the pace of the budget deficit that we're trying to address. So there's still some concern that this could get a ruling, not only that the tariffs were illegal, and I think you said from your NAW show, there were people there that were, some of the people in the know were thinking that that was almost a foregone conclusion. But then there's
let me
about that.
Let me clarify that. Brian Wild, great guy, good buddy, is a head legislative representative of NAW. Brian has very strong opinions on that, the legalities of it, the constitutionality of it. Did not necessarily coincide with a lot of other research and or information we've been seeing. So love Brian. Trying to get him on the podcast. He keeps saying yes, and we can't pin him down. But that was his strong opinion. There was others though in the crowd. There's some of the panelists that were there. We're talking about the idea of the same thing happening. The question is, what do we do? My question to you, what are your thoughts on with what you just described, was with the White House making these comments, was that is gamesmanship the word? I don't know if gamesmanship is the word, but Trumpmanship of like, let's go cast some doubt on what the risks are and what could happen with the wrong decision.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of lobbying taking place on this, right? Indirectly taking place. And as I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the fact that this is drawing out or taking longer to make a decision, a lot of times means that there's more ambiguity with the court on making a decision, or even the depth or breadth of the decision that they're actually making. So look, I think it's a complete crapshoot at this point to be betting on what's going to occur or not occur along that way. But and they're, now they're saying February 20th. My guess is that good chance that doesn't happen on the 20th.
I think, they throw these things out, Tom, and it's every time that the Supreme Court is set to make an announcements, because they have regular times that they make announcements on rulings and so forth. And wow, this is going to be the day. But I think the most intriguing thing for me right now related to this is something that you said a number of weeks ago. I think you said you did some ChatGPT with one of your agents, some deep research on this. And, you came back with a comment about, and it was just made perfect sense. I just hadn't put two and two together. Every day that goes by, the likelihood of this it becomes less and less and less of them being able to, at least maybe they strike it down, but it's going to be more. How would I say? Every day that goes by, it's going to be more watered down what they come back with, because it's going to get harder and harder to give these dollars back.
Yeah, for sure.
Now
there's an interesting corollary to that I read, it's not in any of these articles, but let's say that they did give these dollars back or were able to, now you're injecting a whole bunch of money back into the economy, right? Is that inflationary? It could be. I mean, you're now injecting a bunch of money back into the economy that, like a big, huge tax refund. Right. What is that going to do? So yeah, it's not an easy decision. And as this article points out, the amount that is being collected is starting to become more and more substantial every month.
And it's impacting the economy. Right. Now, if you stop and think about it, is if, and I just go back to this, we talk about this quite regularly. And I agree with what Stephen Rammel saying here is he believes tariffs would not be completely wiped out, but there'd be 10 to 15% tariff floor.
Yeah, I mean, he's right. It's like similar to COVID effort. I mean, this would be a large amount. Now, who would be the beneficiary of that money is a different story, but that would be a large amount of money back in the system.
Yeah. Well, if you look at that, right, but then what does it do, right? We've got an article later about, GDP is rushing, but people aren't necessarily feeling the impact of that, right? So you look at this as well, is what is the negative impact that comes back to it, right? We're seeing some results. And if people can, I mean, this is, when you look at where we're at with a deficit, right? Is that issue is this is having an impact on the deficit. That was one of the major goals. And I go back to this all the time is, you have to look at, and this is, Darlene, my wife, and I chat about this all the time because I'm not a Trump supporter or this administration supporter in any way, shape, or form per se. But I look at what's going on and I look beyond the, what my wife calls the Cheeto and say, what is he trying to do? You cannot argue the success that he's had in negotiating things. He has a plan and he told us, borders, fentanyl, fair trade across the board, lower interest rates, and onshoring manufacturing for a robust U.S. economy. Well, if you can start impacting the deficit, which is, I mean, there's people that talk about the United States, Treasury running off a cliff, right? And so if you start impacting this and it's starting to work, you have to wonder about this. And I look at it and from my viewpoint and said, now everyone's at different stages and the amount of money impacts people differently. But let's just say the impact of it was $2,000 per US household, right? But you were starting to impact and kick or chip away at the deficit. And we had more balanced and fair trade with countries. Maybe the outcome out of this as well is that we have a little bit more reign and control on the Chinese impact on our economy. And we can start to onshore or reshore some manufacturing, this balance. There's a lot of good things that could potentially come to the economy out of this.
Agreed. Again, that may or may not have zero to do with how the Supreme Court actually rules, if they look at it entirely from a legal black and white perspective, or if they look at the fact that there's other extenuating circumstances that we need to be taking into account.
Right. So they started work. They got this in November, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. So we're, December, January, February. So they're 3 months in on this. They've not said anything. There's no hint from them, from the Supreme Court, that says they're coming back with everything. To your point in your comment about the every day that goes by, it's probably less of a major threat. That's
just been historically the case, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of common sense that comes with that too, right? From that setting. And I think it just becomes harder to put more heavyweight teeth into it. But I think the issue that goes with that as well, potentially, is, and I think Mike Hockett, that was with us last week from MDM, really appreciative of Mike being with us. I'm going to actually joining him on his podcast later today, which I'm looking forward to. And I love it in the distribution world, right? Is for the most part, all the different shows are very supportive of each other. Mike's been on our show many times. We've got Jason Bader from Distribution Talk coming on our show shortly. I'm going to be on Jason's show shortly. And we're kind of supporting each other to really just support wholesale distribution and manufacturing, which is great. But with that, Mike brought up the fact that I think it was Customs and Border Patrol, was it, that was already starting to work on a system and a process for.
No, I brought that up.
You brought that up. Yeah. Don't forget to ring your own bell.
That's right. Well, hey, I get attribution, right? Attribution is
there. You
correct.
Go. Hey, there's Mike. Hey, Mike just jumped in. Sorry, Mike. I was trying to pump you up, and Tom just took the credit and the wind right out of my sail.
It was the only thing insightful I said all day, and you took it away from me.
That's not true, but that's a good comment. Oh. Although when you got somebody of Mike's caliber that was on the show with us last week, it was hard to get stuff in. But the point was, they're already starting to work on trying to figure out how to give these things back. When has our government ever been efficient on giving money back? So, I think the idea, I don't know, my gut tells me that it could be years. If they are required to give anything back, it could be years before those dollars start to flow again.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I don't think it'll be years. No, not at all. Especially if it's ruled that they need to give it back. I think it will start coming back fairly quickly. If there's a lot of ambiguity or whatever, that's a whole different story. We've talked a lot about that in the past and all the legal things and all that stuff. So, I mean, the Supreme Court has a lot on their shoulders here. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
This may be one of the largest, most impactful, broadly impactful decisions they've made, if not, in recent times.
So here we are, almost 3 months into this. Before we move to the next article and the next topics, any adjustments to your takeaway on this? What's going to happen?
Here's what I think, but I certainly wouldn't bet on this. Let's just put it that way. I want to know
what you're willing to bet on.
I think there'll be a moderate likely that, hey, this was illegal. You shouldn't have done this. However, we're not going to stop these tariffs. We're going to let these continue, but you don't do this again. You cannot do this again. You cannot continue to threaten countries continue to threaten other countries using the statute that you're using here.
So the Emergency Powers Act is not, right. So I don't know that the question is whether it's legal, it's whether it was appropriate or the.
No, it was just a legal use of the Emergency Powers Act, right? Okay. So I believe they will say, no, this was not a legal application of the Emergency Powers Act. However, it's been done. So what's in place will stay in place, but you can no longer use the Emergency Powers Act as a vehicle or tool for instituting new tariffs with existing countries or threatening other countries under this act. That's what I think is the highest probability, but even that I would probably give it a 15%, 20% probability at most.
Okay.
So what do you think?
So I just asked Gemini in a little.
No. You don't ask Gemini. You have to give it your own answer.
No. I asked. It's a good point. A good call. Good call.
Jesus, man, this is.
What I asked Gemini was, can the Supreme Court award damages?
Okay, and they can. They absolutely can. They cannot reward damages. They can require a refund, though.
Do you want to know what AI says?
Sure, let's hear what AI says.
Since you're so bold.
Yeah.
Okay. In general, the Supreme Court does not award damages in the traditional sense you would see in a trial court, but the Supreme Court is primarily an appellate court. The job is to review the legal decisions of lower courts rather than to hold trials, hear evidence, so on and so forth. So it's not saying that it can't. It said it can award monetary relief, but it's not its common thing. So the question that I have, so my response is, and my answer is, what I believe is the reasonable thing to do would be, if they believe that the Emergency Powers Act was the incorrect statute to use to put tariffs on, other countries, right, to apply tariffs, then that's what they're there to rule on. I don't know what the exact question that was put to them was from what the lower courts came up with, but it appears that the question, in fact, is, was this the incorrect up or thumbs up, thumbs down? Could this be used in this setting? Forget about legality, correct, whatever it is, right? Was this an appropriate use of that statute in this setting? My belief is that what they should
statute in that setting, right? I think that's was it a legal use of that statute in that setting?
Legal, appropriate. I don't know if it's illegal to use a statute. I think my belief is the question is it the correct use of the statute, right? Because we know is we have all of these different statutes that can be applied to tariffs. The question is, was this one acceptable to use in this setting? Call it whatever you want. I don't necessarily subscribe to the illegal component of it, right? That would be like saying, anyways, doesn't matter. My belief is what the appropriate decision would be is to say, if the thinking is no, and by the way, Congress voted on this week, right? It doesn't have any meaning to it, but there was a vote taken this week about their thinking on that, and it was, I think, 2 Republicans crossed the aisle on it. But
I think they vote on. What did they vote on?
They just I can't. It was not impactful or doesn't change anything because it's at the Supreme Court. But anytime this emergency powers statute is used, I think it has to be reviewed by Congress quarterly. Was what came up this week, and so they reviewed it and they said, no, I don't think that's the right factor. The point is, I think what you're going to see out of this is that the Supreme Court is looking at this. My hope, I'll say what I think and what I hope. The Supreme Court looks at this and says, if they believe, and I don't know enough of the law and the ins and the outs of how these things can be applied or not applied. So I don't think any one of us has the capability to know what they're thinking on this standpoint. But to me, something that would work very well and be probably the most beneficial, if it is the fact that say, no, either one, and by the way, what Congress, if I remember correctly, what I read, what Congress was saying was, it is no longer an emergency issue, right? So even if the Supreme Court were to say to uphold it, what Congress was saying was, it's no longer an emergency to the fact of the way he implemented things, okay? So I think coming back, and if they say that it is, to your point, illegal, to my term, inappropriate use would be, or the wrong statute, is for them to just come back and say it no longer applies because it's no longer, and this could be, this just hit me, Tom. Congress's view of this week could be their positioning as well of saying, hey, you know what? Leave it for what it's been. We no longer believe that it's an emergency. Come back and just tell the administration, apply one of the other 4 different standards or statutes that you can apply for your tariffs moving forward. My hope would be, and it's no offense to people that have paid the tariffs, manufacturers, and that's flow through to distributors and end users on this. And by the way, I'm paying the same increased prices that you are. I just had a bunch of work done on my sprinkler system yesterday, and the prices were higher than expected. And so we're all impacted by it. But my preference personally would be to say, nope, you can't do this. That's it. Apply something else if you want to do tariffs moving forward. Use one of these other ones that requires.
So what I'm hearing you say is you believe is they will, and maybe you're saying this is what you would prefer versus what you believe. I don't know. But what you're saying is, hey, you know what? It is no longer appropriate at this point in time. So you can no longer collect tariffs under the Emergency Protection Act statute. And that's it. Stop right there. And then, they have a choice to then go and continue to collect tariffs using other statutes outside the emergency. But as of whenever the ruling's done, the party is over as it relates to the emergency protection. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
I think let me tell you what I think will happen. What I think will happen, and I'll tell you what I'd like to see. What I'd like to see is to them, because, and most specifically, my opinion is stronger on this, Tom, this morning, because we're seeing a positive impact to the economy and the deficit tied to these dollars, right? what I would prefer to see is for them to just say, hey, you know what? As of this date, it's no longer an emergency. You can't use that anymore. If you want to do tariffs, use all of those other statutes, C 204 or whatever there are. Some of them require Congress, others require studies from internal government departments. Because what will happen if they do that is tariffs will stop until they can bring in those other statutes with the research or Congress, right?
That's right.
But now we have a risk, and to your point earlier, the potential inflationary risk of dollars flooding back into the economy. The big question that I have, and then I'll make a statement. The big question that I have is with this is the Supreme Court been tasked with deciding thumbs up or thumbs down if it's acceptable, legal, whatever you want to call it? Is that it? Or have they been charged with making that decision and then adding punitive damages or requirements or other things based upon that? I don't know that.
From what I understand, there's only two primary things that they are going to rule on. One is it legal or illegal? And secondly, do you have to give refunds? If it's ruled illegal, are you ordered to give refunds for this because it was in a illegally obtained revenue? That's the only two things I know.
But where did you get that's what they've been charged with? Have you seen
all the stuff we've been looking at over the weeks?
I haven't seen anything about that myself that says that that's been their charter, so to speak. Because remember, the Supreme Court is getting what a lower court already struck down.
Right. And the lower court struck down the illegality of it. Right. That's what they
had
did.
Nothing to do with refunds or anything with that. It was
the
just
refund thing has come up as a issue with the Supreme Court.
But I don't know that it's actually part of their docket, so to speak. That's my big question. I've seen nothing that says that's on their docket. So my gut says, but every day that goes by is less and less likely. But today I would say they'll probably strike it down, but not penalties or refunds. I think that if we talk about this again in 2 weeks, I might say that they come back and follow what Congress said, which was, hey, this is no longer an emergency. Don't do this again.
So maybe the softest landing would be, this is no longer an emergency. You have 90 days to stop collecting tariffs under the Emergency Protection Act, right? Obviously, there's going to be no refunds or anything like that. And then they have 90 days to sort out, is there another way to collect? That's probably the softest landing out of all of those things that are there.
And this will be an interesting thing to see, because this is a heavily weighted, right-sided court, right? So I think if you had, the Supreme Court of 10 years ago or 12 years ago, it might be a little bit different, because people might be looking to, not questioning the Supreme Court's, what's the word, bias, but there has to be a little bit of that somewhere, right? Everybody has opinions. So anyways, there we are.
Right. We've put our
into first article.
We've put our stake in the ground, and we'll see what happens here. Hoping that, well, who knows? I don't even think it's going to happen. The 20th would be next Friday. And I think it would supposedly happen before our show. I think it happens at like 10 in the morning Eastern time. So it'd be before the show.
Right. Well, it's, Tom, just to, compliment to you from that research you did a few weeks ago, because I think that, just kind of going back to that comment about every day that goes by, right, is the lesser likelihood of something major and impactful like that. And then now we're seeing this stuff, and this might my final takeaway, right? Every day that goes by, there's probably less risk of something major blow up. That part of it. And then the second part of it is we're getting reports now that there's positive impacts to the economy, and that those refunds could potentially, I'm sure there's economists that could argue either side of that coin, right? That the rebates could, or refunds could have a potential negative impact. And it's certainly not going to support the ongoing benefit that we're seeing to the deficit. And the deficit is a big deal.
Yeah. It'd be kind of ironic where, when the tariffs came out, inflation, right? Here we are a year later, there has not really been much change, at least per the data, in inflation. Then they rule the tariffs illegal and they give money back, then you end up with inflation. So
yeah.
would be
Right.
kind of an ironic situation. All right, let's move on.
And Powell goes quietly off to write his book.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Good. What do you want to hit next?
Let's see. Next article: flat retail sales confirm slump in consumer sentiment. I think that, there's a couple articles here. I'll jump ahead. The small business survey, optimism remains above historical average. You have a little bit of a conflict here. Consumers, again, per the data, not spending less. Business, on the other hand, seems to be a bit more optimistic. I heard a term I haven't heard before. Have you heard the term vibecession? Vibecession, like recession, but vibecession.
No.
So there's a term that has started to float around in the consumer world of, the economy, all the numbers look okay, and unemployment is still holding steady. That's one of our next articles here, and so forth. Yet I just don't feel like things are going well.
Yep.
So kind of the vibe thing, right? There's a vibe out on the street that things aren't really going well, even though economically the numbers appear and the employment numbers appear to be solid.
Mm-hmm. So this is an interesting point, right? Because it ties really well to a quote from this article. And this is from advisorperspectives.com. It's talking about the National Federation of Independent Business. And I think there's just a great comment that's made in this. It's from the chief economist at NFIB. It says, while GDP is rising, small businesses are still waiting for noticeable economic growth. Despite this, more owners are reporting better business health and anticipating higher sales. At the end of the day, right, the noticeable growth isn't there yet.
Is this on the business one or which article was that from?
No, that was from the one you were just talking about small business surveys.
Okay, the small business one. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So GDP is rising, right? And there's huge expectations of, 5% growth this year. 4 or 5, even some people talking about 6 in the right setting, right? But that's not trickling through yet. And it's just interesting kind of to watch all these pieces, right? I think you said earlier, I think it's from one of the coming articles. So we have today is talking about the impact of tariffs on households. We see, this kind of, what have we been calling it? Simmering economy, right? GDP is strong, interest rates high, right? Inflation just kind of fluttering around. Again, more and more people that are out there. I heard David Sachs on the All In podcast last week. He had obviously been listening to our podcast because there's just, we have real-time information now that is in front of us. We have artificial intelligence. We have data and details at the stroke of a keyboard, swipe of a mouse. And, we're using antiquated methods to figure out what is our, is 2% really the number? And it comes from a crackpot Kiwi legislator walking down a hallway in the 1970s, right? Or 80s or whenever it was. So I just think we've got all these things happening. But now I think with this GDP rise, then we're seeing tariffs impact the deficit. There might be some things that kind of weigh a little heavier on this. It'd be great if we could see some interest rates come back to a little bit normal and pump some dollars into the economy to grow some factories and some infrastructure.
Well, I was looking earlier as far as interest rates, still the poly market very low for March and April, higher for June, not surprising. But yeah, I mean, the average person on the street, and look, I can feel it. I think a lot of this sort of negative consumer sentiment is from all the noise out there. Oh, AI is going to take everybody's job. And, all this just, all the stock market, software is dead. And I mean, you look at all this stuff that's just, frankly, a lot of noise, but I think that noise adds up. And I think it creates a sort of a depressing doubt to a lot of people on things. But yet, if you look at the numbers don't really reflect all the noise that's out there along the way. I mean, even the job market, if we go to the next article down, is employment rate came out, employment job report came out last Wednesday.
Yep.
Numbers were up. Now, again, we've talked about this over and over, roller coasters all over the place, but the unemployment number changed is still at 4.3%. I mean, that's still as low of unemployment as we've ever had.
Yep.
Right. And a lot of those people choose not to work. I mean, there's a lot of people who've chosen not to work as well.
I would love to know what that number is actually.
Yeah, it's higher than it's been.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But it's I just think that there's a lot of noise out there and a lot of opinions and just stuff that I think can, be unsettling for a lot of people. And, it's sure, is AI going to impact certain jobs? But technology has always impacted certain jobs. There's always been all these things, technological change.
Hey, the assembly line was gonna ruin the economy, and Ford's assembly line was gonna ruin things, and everybody's gonna lose their jobs, and then technology, then computers were, and then the internet was, and here we are again. But I think that let's roll this back to why we're here. Stephen just made a nice comment. He says there are a lot of news channels. How does one decode? And I think this is the world that we're living in right now. And I was just going to tie that back into, where, our audience of wholesale distributors and manufacturers sit into this is like the point, I think, to Stephen's comment that I would make with that is, how do you identify the signals versus the noise, right? And how do you take these components of these things and tie them into, if I run a distribution company, whether I'm one branch or 200 branches, right? I have to go try and drive my business ahead every day on all of these mixed signals, right? Look, I mean, I would assume, everybody that's in manufacturing and distribution would love to get some dollars back that have been paid in tariffs. How do you do that? I bring this up all the time, right? If you're a distributor and you're getting so-called tariffs, a new line item tariff impact to your to an invoice coming from a manufacturer, can you go back and ask that manufacturer to get those? Yeah, maybe. But if you've got a manufacturer that all they did is raise their price, how do you know what percent of their price increase was actually tied to tariffs? So really, the end of the day is, if I'm a distributor, I got to figure it's going to be pretty hard for me to get anything back. Maybe the manufacturer gets something back, or the offshore manufacturer gets something back. So I think we have all of this noise and figuring out what the signals within this all are. And then you start looking at it and saying, well, wait a minute, if the GDP is strong, job market is holding steady, right? What's going to happen with interest rates? If interest rates come down, I can access more capital better, but I can't see that yet. Well, with tariffs, I don't like tariffs, but tariffs are having a positive economic impact right now. You've got to find some baselines within your business that say, I believe that I can act upon these things. I'm going to set a baseline that say, I'm going to take action on these things, and then have alternative plans, right, for what happens if the negative or a positive happens.
Yeah.
And that in a lot of my conversations with people and some of the events that I've been at, and plenty more events this year ahead, I think that's kind of what you're seeing is people doing the best they can to plan with what they have.
Well, I think you have no choice but to do that. And
well, there's definitely people out there that are just kind of waiting.
Well, no, it's the paralysis, right? And I think that's what the consumer is feeling from all the noise. Is there's a paralysis that, maybe there are definitely companies that are maybe slower in hiring, or not hiring, or taking a wait and see approach. I don't doubt that to be true, but at the same time, I think there are a lot of jobs that are being hired for, and there is a lot of need. Clearly, otherwise the unemployment rate wouldn't be so low. Yep. So it's again, it goes back to my reasoning of just don't watch the news. But this goes so far beyond the news. This is just prevalent. It's prevalent in conversation. I was at a Super Bowl party over the weekend. This was prevalent in the conversation. Right. You can't
because the game was certainly not impressive.
Yeah, there was certainly nothing to watch on the game. But hey, our predictions were all right on the score, or on who the winner was.
Yeah.
So we got that going.
Yep, we were all. You and Mike and I all picked Seattle last week. So
yeah.
That was just one of our software developers, Justin's comment, made a great comment. We were talking a few days before the Super Bowl, and Justin's comment was, It's got to be Seattle because New England doesn't deserve to be there because their route through the playoffs was a bunch of teams with beat up second string starters and so forth, or second string players. So it's kind of interesting. I only saw part of it because I was so sick last Sunday. But anyways, Mike was correct. You were correct. I was correct. Tom, let's jump ahead. You know what? I dove in on. You were still talking about your Super Bowl party. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We need to move ahead, right?
Let's
We
go to
spent
this
way
article.
too long here in the economy stuff.
Let's go to this article that we have from TED, the Electrical Distributor magazine, with their Baird research component here. We've got some great charts in that, and it really ties into the discussion we've been having and what the sentiment is amongst distributors. This was a quarterly Baird research and TED magazine sponsored. It says, how concerned are you, surveying distributors, how concerned are you about your company's outlook in the following markets, residential and commercial? In the residential market, 35% not concerned, 39% someone concerned, only 13% said very concerned. It said in the commercial market, though, out of residential, 43%, a higher percentage, were not concerned about the residential market. 26, so now we're up to 69% there is not concerned or somewhat concerned in the commercial market. So the commercial market seems a little bit stronger, which is probably larger budgets and as talking about dealing with the consumers in residential.
Well, would that come from the data centers and all the other things that are, that would all fall under commercial, right? So,
well, you've got, there's yes, the answer to that is yes. The other component of that is the idea of it's not just the data centers and so forth, which are a big impact, but we have in the commercial side of things, people working on projects that are, budgeted and funded and approved last year, 2 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, hospitals that are being built and funded and so forth, and new schools and things like that come from that. So there's the sentiment there across distribution in this setting is probably a little more solid than some people might think.
There we go.
Good. Where do you want to go next?
Do you want to go into the next section?
Yep. Why don't we dive ahead there? What's your favorite in our e-commerce and marketing segment?
Well, I thought the second article, the Amazon AI content marketplace.
Yep. Good.
So what's happening, it doesn't exist yet, but what Amazon is proposing is building a marketplace for content. Now, what's not 100% clear is what would they consider to be valid content to include in that marketplace.
Right.
The reason they're doing this, so they say, is that the amount of data and content that's available on the internet that the LLMs and the AI models are using to train on has basically come to an end. They've used all the data that's available.
Sounds astounding to me.
Right. And that's all publicly available data, they said, that's out on the internet. So, but in Amazon's, I think Microsoft's doing something similar, but what Amazon is saying is, hey, companies and so forth, and potentially even individuals, I guess, have data that's not accessible, data and information that's not accessible on the internet publicly. And you could put it up onto this marketplace and make a lot of money because people can basically license it from you, or get it from that point. What I find interesting about this, we talked about this, we were doing some homework a few months ago about the industry and building like an industry model.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that we ran into with some people that we were talking about, or some data that we received, is Amazon is trying to potentially find ways to gather some proprietary information from distributors and manufacturers about their products and their specs, all of that kind of stuff, so that they can use it for their own benefit. I don't know if this has direct correlation to that or not, but I still would be, maybe concerned is too strong a word. I would be at least wary of exactly how they would use this data. And because in theory, right, think about all the data that exists in our industry, right, that's out there. that wouldn't necessarily be readily available on the internet that, is, I don't know if it's IP, but it's certainly potentially very valuable data. I mean, that data could come in the form of product information, regulatory information, but could also come in statistics and analytics that are coming, out of your ERP or CRM or platforms or other things that you're using. So there's a lot of interesting downstream opportunity and at the same time potential issues with, I think, this approach.
Well, and I think that those are all very valid and solid comments. I just think, if you look at this, whether you're a trade association, a buying group, a distributor, a manufacturer, wherever you fit into the audience that we support, is the idea of what data maybe an audit, right? What data do I have? What is super proprietary to my business? And where am I sharing that, or who has access to that? What can even be put into the LLMs out there, right? And it kind of ties to the conversation that we've had a number of times, is about having an industry model that is controlled by the industry, as opposed to where data gets leaked out to. And I'll give you a great example that our friends at the National Association of Wholesalers and Distributors and Mike and his team at MBM, they've put all of their combined data available for their members through their tool called Nucleus, right? Which is a searchable tool. It's got some AI built into it to look at all of that data. Well, that data is extremely valuable.
They could take that data and put it up on this Amazon marketplace.
They could. The question is that a good idea?
No, I'm not saying it is. Yeah. I'm just saying they could.
They could.
Right? And then what would they pay for? I don't know how they're going to charge. Is it an auction or how it would all work?
Yep. This will be an interesting one to watch. And, at first glance, right, this might be something that says, kind of irrelevant, not a big deal. But then if you start thinking about it, is even if you look at it from this standpoint, and I think you were alluding to something similar to this earlier. If you're a manufacturer and you're putting all your product spec data into your Amazon listings, you got to know that they've got a database that they're going to be licensing out to people as well from this, right? So what is really happening with it? And I don't know enough about the terms of service at Amazon with what you load in about product spec, but think about what we were talking about, about having an industry model that, is looking at how many teeth are in a DeWalt reciprocal saw blade, right? An LLM doesn't really care about that, right? So it's going to go search the internet, and it's likely there's a high likelihood of hallucinations with that. And when you start thinking about specs about a defibrillator or about a safety equipment piece or something like that, that becomes powerful of the damage it could cause with a hallucination. But if you have an industry model like that, you've got relevant real data.
Well, it doesn't mean that the industry model couldn't hallucinate either, but
no.
The interesting part here of all of this too, as well, is that is just the data concept that there's this data drought, right? Mm-hmm. And
that just is astounding to me. But
right, so let's just assume for a minute that that's true, mm-hmm. right? That there is a data drought from all the publicly. I would suspect of all the stuff they got on the internet is maybe 10% of the available data that's out there from, that exists in places mm-hmm. that you just can't find on the internet.
Yep.
So it means you've really just scratched the surface of the quote unquote data and knowledge that could be used to fuel a model and to do some of these things that are here. So anyway, it's not available yet. There was nothing in this article that said when it was going to be available. I don't know if this is just a shot across the bow from Amazon to see how things are received, but
I'm sure they have every intention of doing this. The question with that is, what are they going to gather? Who's going to participate, and what does the value become? Because obviously in that setting, they've got to have high quantities of data that are relevant to people and get people to sign up for this.
Yeah.
I do think this will be, as you could imagine, right? You look at Amazon leading the way in so many different things. This will be the model for what is it, I shouldn't say it will be, it is likely to be the model that says, what is your data worth in an open market?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And what does it worth to the big model providers, right? What does it worth to the open AIs or the Anthropics or all that stuff to be able to incorporate that into their model? Because once it's out there, they can buy it now and put it into their own world that are there.
That's what, which is, this is so it'll be interesting to see too, right? We've seen New York Times and other publications, license already to some of the language models, and I think a few of them exclusively, full access to their data. Well, what happens now are those the baseline of what those pricing models should look like? I think it's going to be, in a year or two, the data that you can buy from Amazon is going to be, ubiquitous to just as it is being able to buy shoelaces there.
Yeah.
That's where they're headed, right? Which I guess is just a bigger question about, how big can that organization get?
So let's compare that to this next article.
How big can that organization get?
Who, Amazon? Probably as big as they want.
You gonna be leasing your humanoid robot from Amazon?
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, Amazon doesn't do a lot of leasing, right? I mean, you don't, and they probably could, right? You could probably lease a lot of things.
They didn't do a lot of data marketplaces before this announcement.
But yeah, I'll be looking forward to leasing my robot off there.
Okay.
But let's compare that to this next article. 6 steps to kill 80% of your content.
Good. This is in our e-commerce and marketing segment.
Yeah, and this is from Marketing Profs. What they're saying here, enterprise marketing teams are drowning in content among the pressures to feed every channel, keep SEO rankings alive, and so forth. Publishing has created a huge amount of content. But if you read on in the article, it talks about that the quantity, there's a lot of quantity, but also a lot of crap, right? We've talked about this before. So what they're saying is, and I tend to agree with this, is go find your quality content, right? The content that really isn't just a bunch of, crap that was AI generated that doesn't, AI slop, right? Get rid of your AI slop and identify the 20% of your content that's really good, and then organize it and set it up in a way that becomes as LLM friendly as possible. We've talked about this with some of our customers about, even as they build processes and SOPs and things like that, you can do it, but it's not very effective just to take a PDF document of something you wrote and throw it in and call that. You're much better served organizing that content and structuring that content in a way that is friendly to the models that are there. So what this article is suggesting is go find the 20% of your content that is really the high quality content and organize it and structure it in such a way that it is going to get the maximum results.
Well, let's hit those 6 points that it talks about. So the first one tied to your 20% that you mentioned there was audit ruthlessly. Find the 20% that perform. So again, this is on our marketing side of our business. 2 is filter for purpose. Every asset must earn its place. So purpose, persona, proof, and path are the 4 Ps that it talks about in there. 3rd was double down on winners. So repurpose, don't recreate. So use the data, the good data, the well-performing data, tighten up some messaging, put it into different channels, use it in different ways. So a good example with that would be, a white paper that becomes a magazine article, that becomes a series of blog posts that can be a webinar as well, right? Use that, repurpose that as well. And then streamline for quality, build systems that reward focus, measure progress, not motion. I like this because this is, I'll just say this, and this is something that I wave a flag about all the time. It says most enterprise dashboards still reward activity, traffic, clicks, downloads, MQLs. These metrics matter, but they don't tell you if content is driving business impact. Shift progress metrics that show movement through the buyer journey. And they had 3 points here: track engagement depth instead of page views, right? So, if we've got quite a few marketing people that join us regularly that are in B2B marketing. And I think this is really interesting, right? Because the clicks is one thing, but what are they doing? How long are they staying? What are they viewing? What is that content? And, as a little side note to that data from in a marketing automation solution feeds right into the platform that we have at LeadSmart that you were describing to us earlier today, that just becomes another data point about a customer journey, right? Because your customer has many journeys with you. And an ERP trend is just an invoice in an ERP is a snapshot of a point in time in a transaction. It doesn't tell you about the deeper journey your customer has with you. What are they watching on your website? What are they communicating on their branch visits that's in your CRM? So it talks about track engagement and depth instead of page views, measure opportunity, influence, not just leads, right? Leads are, the old adage, right? The marketing hates sales because sales doesn't do anything with the leads, and sales hates marketing because the leads suck. Well, this is what we have. And then it says, watch pipeline velocity, not impressions. Impressions are nice, but what are you getting from it? And the last one, it said, lead the culture shift, make focus a team value. So they just go back and talk about each of these 6 key points again. So it was a really nice article.
Yeah, no, I think you're much better off in taking your high quality content and investing it, not just repurposing it as you talked about there, which I do think is important, but again, even structuring it and making it as LLM friendly as you possibly can so that it can be picked up by as many different things as possible because it has that value.
Good. Jump into our technology, cybersecurity, and robotics section.
That's a new section, huh?
No, the new section is down below it.
I don't remember robotics being in our title.
Well, we added the term robotics to it because we were talking about, you're correct. The new section is down below because historically we have had technology, really AI technology and cybersecurity was the title of it in the newsletter. And again, if I'm delayed in saying this, I'm glad you brought that up. If you are listening to us on the recorded podcast, Apple, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever that might be, you are not seeing the newsletter that we have here. And the newsletter that Tom and I review every week with our guests is called Around the Horn and Wholesale Distribution and Manufacturing. If you'd like to get that weekly newsletter that will keep you up to date on what's happening in the world as it relates to manufacturing, wholesale distribution, send us an email at hello@leadsmarttech.com. Jump onto LinkedIn, go to the LeadSmart Technologies page, and you'll see the newsletter in the corner there. You can click that link. It'll take you to the newsletter. You can subscribe to it there. Or you can jump on our website, www.aroundthehornpod.com, and sign up for it there as well. And you can get past episodes of this show. So in the newsletter, so we made that adjustment. And then the next section that we'll go to is just our straightforward AI section, which has now its own section by itself. But in this robotics topic, it's Mr. Musk. As I say, you may like him, you may hate him. You may distrust him, but never bet against him. Has been making some pretty big claims about where the humanoid robots from their company, Optimus is what they're called, talking about them hitting the market this year and being able to do some. He said during a recent Tesla meeting, he commented that the event was called We Robot. Claimed that robots could now perform everything from babysitting to mowing lawns with a price tag between $20,000 and $30,000.
And what's the release time frame? Is there a time frame?
He's talking about. He said he had been talking about this year. He said prediction markets. Isn't it so funny? Here we are, and this they just got a screenshot in this article about the poly market, but it's so interesting. Now you've got. What's the new prediction market that's Crashly?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
but I mean it's everywhere now, and then even if you use Coinbase for your cryptocurrency purchases, I just noticed the other day in my Coinbase app is that there's a whole prediction market they're building out there now too. Yeah. So anyways, that says prediction market odds suggest a humanoid robot in 2026, maybe a little too optimistic, although that's what he was pushing towards. Kalshi is what I was just trying to remember. Kalshi, the humanoid robot, has just a 21% chance of being available for sale in 2026. Listen, Tom, at the end of the day, what I wanted to, and why I wanted to add this article was the idea behind the fact that no matter how you slice it, we are going to have humanoid robots over the next 18 to 24 months being a major part of what we see and do. Our follow-up article here is about a next-gen retail robot that can do great things. You're going to just, and I'll just give you my description again of what I see is you're going to have, we've got quite a few customers at LeadSmart that have great inventory management systems that are driven by robotics and order packaging systems that are driven by robotics. But right now they're doing this with loading all of those inventory items in manually into a big unit where little cars are going back and grabbing each of the orders and so forth and getting them ready for shipment. But I think what we're going to be seeing now is things like that, but we're going to be having our shelves stocked by robots, and those robots are going to have sensors and cameras and AI built into them that, if you're a sales guy that wants to know exactly what an inventory level is, that data can come from one of those robots that's going to be feeding a system, even a system like ours at LeadSmart with all of that.
A lot of data that can be gathered.
Well, yeah. And then, then you think about it from a security standpoint, right? Do we still need a security guard? Because if you pay $22 an hour for a security guard to, monitor your facility, they're probably not going to be chasing down the intruder, right? They want to scare away the intruder. They don't have a camera built into their head. They don't have infrared sensors for what's going on around the perimeter of your building where they could continue to be checking inventory on pipe stacks or lumber stacks outside of your warehouse. And I just think I'm super bullish on this. You've heard me talk over and over again about wanting to have one in our house. I say that, but then I'm also, am I really ready for that? To have Rosie from the Jetsons cruising around my house? Don't know, but I think so. I look at, again, back to Elon Musk talking about we won't need to work in the future because of AI. I don't understand how that could happen, nor what would we do with ourselves. But he says you'll need to work because you chose to work. But I look at what I could do, the time I could spend with my wife, the things I could do that interest me, whether it's researching and reading or sailing or whatever it is. If my hillside is being weeded or my car is being washed by this same robot that I paid for once, he knows how to change his own batteries, and he knows that he has to stay quiet between certain hours if he's doing any tasks.
Yeah. That's why Musk says that he believes there'll be a $25 trillion market cap on this by 2050, and the next 20 years or 20 some years.
And not just Elon Musk, but many others are saying now that all of us will have multiple robots that are assisting us in our home life and work life and so forth. And they're saying Optimus can be far bigger than the car side of Tesla.
Oh yeah, no, the car side will be left in the dust if that's what he's saying. He won't even remember Tesla from the car.
So this just triggered for me. This would be fun. We've talked a number of times on this show about how we both feel about self-driving cars. And I think if I remember correctly, you were very much of a, yeah, let's go for it. I'm happy to just get in the car and get somewhere. I like to drive. But what if I could say, hey, you know what? I'm driving up to Ventura to see you. I'll have my robot drive the car, but I'm going over to visit my mom over the mountain. And I love that mountain drive. I'm driving today.
There'll probably be options for that.
Yeah.
I think that, look, before you end up with 100% self-driving cars on the road, that's a long, long, long way away. There'll always be people who want to drive a car or have a car that they can drive for whatever reason. Right. So that'll always be an opportunity. Seems to me like the more simple thing is you'd have a self-driving car and you'd have a non-self-driving car, and you could choose to drive which one whenever you chose to. So
yeah, that's good. Well, it's interesting, right? As we go back to this, so the following article I'm talking about robotics here is this Simbi launched what's called the Tally 4.0, a shelf scanning retail robot. The company says the robot introduces major advancements in runtime vision, sensing, and edge AI. 12 hours of runtime, ultra high resolution and specialty cameras, 3D and 360-degree coverage, and the full stack NVIDIA AI infrastructure. It captures more of the store more often and delivers insight into what's in stock, how it's priced, and where it's placed. So it calls
So
it
how
a
does
new.
it know that if it's scanning shelves and then there's stuff behind it? There's stuff, multiple layers on the shelves.
Oh, you mean like a box behind a box behind a
Yeah.
box?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the picture here, right? I know it's a little hard to see, but looks like it's scanning a grocery shelf where you have all
Yeah.
the stuff, box behind a box type of thing.
My assumption is it has data loaded in it to start with. It does one of two things, right? Is data loaded of what's supposed to be there already, and it has a 360-degree camera, so it's catching all angles.
Yeah, or it must know how big the shelves are, know something, how many boxes fit on the shelves or whatever.
The point of that I wanted to bring this up is, this is what's going on. This is launched now, right? And going back to, we've got, the majority of it, just use the majority of the wholesale distributors that we work with have storefronts and branch locations and so forth that, look, you know what, to have, if you just think about it, a branch, right? Let's just take an electrical distributor branch. You put 3 or 4 robots in place, and maybe if it's a large one, maybe it's 5 or 6, right? You've probably just done that for the cost of 2 full-time employees. But let's just say you want to augment your employees and you're not going to reduce any of your team, right? Those can be scanning the shelves, they can be cleaning the shelves, they can be monitoring for a carbon monoxide leak, they can be loading boxes, unloading trucks, doing all of those things with a team, your existing team of humans to oversee them.
Sure.
Right. So the amount of things that are going to be accomplished will be great. So anyways, I'm excited about this, right? I don't know where we'll put one to work at the Lead Smart offices yet. We got to work on that.
Get lunch, 2 things like that. Wash our car while we're in the parking lot there,
Perfect.
whatever.
So you'll replace me in going to get you lunch? Is that it?
Yeah.
All right. Tom, we just have a few minutes left in our show today. What do you want to catch next? Let's hit something out of our new segment, which is called the latest AI news updates and tools.
So what's the coolest tool you think is in there?
Oh, no. There was, I don't know about the tool component. You want to talk briefly about where did we hit there? Google's commerce platform?
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on this before, right? Is the agentic commerce and the ability to make purchases using AI. Like I said, I haven't seen this, but I'm sure it's happening on some degree or some level. But it says latest earning calls highlighted surging AI adoption and record CapEx, and hinted at a future where AI agents initiate and complete purchases, including complex B2B orders. So the complex B2B order part, right, would mean that you would really have to have a lot of intelligence on your website, or I hate to even use the word website or e-commerce site, right? So there's got to be a better name for this next generation of these things.
Right.
We'll just call it that for lack of a better name, is a lot of intelligence on knowing how to go and figure out all the different pieces and things that could go into a complex order.
Well, I think the big takeaway here is they're launching this universal commerce protocol, right?
Right.
And
Which
so that's that open standard that AI
Right.
systems and now can complete transactions. So I think as we tie this back to, a wholesale distributor in this setting, right, is the idea that you using this universal commerce protocol and your customer using this universal protocol, AI can basically do your transactions and even potentially negotiate things.
Yes. But
They
doing
call it
complex things, right? Like,
right.
we were doing an AI seminar with a prospect or a customer a few months back, and we were showing some scenarios where you could take a photo of a job site, right, and have it automatically figure out the quoting and the parts and the things that could be incorporated there. I would assume that this is the types of things that would be able to do. Take a photo of a job site, be able to use that protocol to identify what are the pieces that are in there, but it has to have some intelligence as to what would be included.
Yep. This ties back to some of your comments earlier today in a previous discussion about how is your data structured and sorted. It says why structured data becomes strategic. It says in this model, AI agents must be able to read, compare, and act on product and supplier information, right? So it's interesting, right? This we're hearing so much conversation right now from both customers and prospects right now that are looking at this whole, what would I say, this whole arena of data lakes, right? I'll just get a data lake. I'll put everything in a data lake, but everything in a data lake does not mean great AI outputs, right? You need different layers within that. And so this is talking about, distributors that historically optimize digital content for human browsing need to rethink their data architecture for machine consumption.
Well, that ties into what we were talking about on the marketing front, right? I think there's a fallacy that, and I think this has come from this data lake conversation, is we just throw the kitchen sink, everything we've got into this thing called a data lake, and it'll all sort itself out, and we'll have all this knowledge in here that we can use for AI or in other purposes here. But this is, I believe, with the same thing, is that it's really more of a quality issue than a quantity issue. Stuff that's quality has to be structured in the way that is the most valuable and most that can be consumed in the most efficient way by the AI, and that's how you're going to minimize hallucinations and minimize bad data,
maximize its use.
Right. If you throw a kitchen, I mean, you'll even see this if you take you build a lot of GPTs, right? You can get sometimes much better results out of a GPT with 5 good pieces of data rather than throwing 20 pieces in there because you just want to throw the kitchen sink in. Right. So it really does become one of the things I've been talking a lot about with customers, and I want to talk more about, is data readiness. It's not even so much hygiene, it's data readiness. Like, what is the right data that you should be incorporating into whatever you're trying to accomplish with AI, not just throw the kitchen sink in there. And
I was just hunting for a note that I had from a conversation that we had. So I guess it was early last week. Was it early last week you were in town? Yeah.
Could be.
I don't know. Anyways, it said, this kind of came out of some of the research we were doing. It says a data lake without structure, governance, context, processes, and a system of engagement is just a more expensive place to store confusion.
Yeah.
Right. But yet we just see an abundance of people rushing out to buy, data lakes. And then from that data lake, it's like, okay, now what?
Well, it sounds cool, right? Sounds like a cool thing to do. So I got this place I can throw all my data into.
Right.
So, and there's nothing wrong with data lakes. I'm not suggesting there's things wrong with data lakes. It's just, again, what is the right?
No, data lakes are critical, right? I mean, it's kind of the future of bringing all of your data sources together, and and then also a good storage spot for that. And but when you're using a platform to call access to that, you still need that, right? And that's that system of engagement that I was just describing, because you need that. And again, I want to hit these because I just think this is powerful. Structure, governance, context, processes, and a system of engagement. When you have those things built into your data lake, you really now are executing well against all of your data.
Did that come from that article or something different?
No, it comes from a discussion the two of us had last week.
Okay. Got it. Yep.
It's an article. It comes from an article you're getting ready to write.
Okay. Fair enough.
How's that? Good.
All right. Hey, we only got a few minutes left. Any things you want to hit?
I think it's important in our sales and M&A section. Love or hate QXO. That's looking to consolidate more and more in the building materials and and roofing marketplace. We watched the big and covered very closely last year the aggressive approach and kind of a hostile buyout of Beacon Supply by QXO, and just raised, what was it, close to $3 billion more money last month, and hit the market with that, with a $2.25 billion acquisition of the folks at Kodiak Building Partners. And that's a big step, big step here. So this was, just looking at the numbers here. Let's see, $2 billion in cash and 13.2 million shares of QXO. So, but QXO actually left
I'll take that deal.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. They left a right to repurchase those shares at $40 per share if they chose to at an ongoing time. So, but $2 billion in cash to that into the folks at Kodiak. We've done some work with some of their portfolio companies, distribution companies there before. And it says for about 40% of Kodiak's 2025 revenues were generated in Florida and Texas, where the building market growth has consistently outpaced the national market. So I'm sure there was more to this than just, there was some of that component of where their strengths were. And it was probably, as you know, you hear this all the time, right? It's, you know, the comment that's made that's, this is highly accretive to our 2026 earnings and blah, 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 blah. But I think this might have patched some holes for them as well.
Okay.
So watch what's, oh, by the way, and Brad Jacobs here said, we're just getting started basically.
Okay.
So anyways, any thoughts on that?
No.
Nothing from all your M&A expertise
on our show though. If you want to get, I want Brad Jacobs on the show. So
is that my role?
That's your role. It's your job.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, let's, Tom, kind of wind things down. Let's scroll through just to the last, our people and leadership section that we have each week. If you hold on for just a second and you're scroll. There's a good article about warehouse operations deploying gamification because we have so much access to data now. This article shows a TV monitor up, and it shows worker of the week and how many points they had earned and the teams that those workers were on a challenge, and really putting some gamification and making work a little more fun. You know, it makes me think about from my earlier part of my career in the both manufacture and distribution of safety equipment and PPE. You know, you go into factory after factory and warehouse after warehouse, and you see the big sign that says, you know, 222 days since a lost time accident. Well, that's nice, but now we're in a world of technology where we've just got access to so much more, and we know how much it just, you know, shows Tay, Sam, Jordan, Riley, and Alex, and how many points they had earned by their productivity and on time, you know, results at work, whatever it might be. So
I think this is interesting, but I think there's two questions that come out of this. One is, you know, we're going to have robots here soon, right? So you're not going to need this. But secondly,
it's a robot competition. They're already having them.
But does this create situations where people could be unsafe? You know, they're trying to do too much. And
yeah, great point.
You know, to get my award or my thing that's here, and I do stuff that maybe is a little reckless or you know, violates some safety related things.
Well, they don't, and I think it's a good point, but they don't talk in there at all about, you know, what is the game, right? So if the game is, you know, there's a safety component to your score, right? I look at that as correct me if I'm wrong. My assumption is you probably went straight to the idea that it's all about productivity, but we don't know what the components of the game.
We don't know. I'm sure it's multifaceted, right?
But there is that risk, of course, as you said. So good. Same in that people and leadership segment. There's a good article from Sales and Marketing Magazine from earlier this week. Words have power, and they have 5 phrases that matter. The one starts with here's why, 2 is how do we, 3 is what do you think, 4 is how did you do that, 5 is tell me more. We have a tendency as leaders, it is probably one of my weaknesses, is to talk too much versus listening more. And I think this was a nice article to go with that. Good.
Okay.
Hit the industry scuttlebutt briefly. Our good friends at MDM, or sorry, at NAW have filed a lawsuit in Oregon. Many states are looking at this, but this, excuse me, the Plastic Recycling and Pollution Modernization Act, they call it oftentimes EPR, has some major implications on the distribution market. Basically, it's tying back to how things are stored, recycled, and then modernizing how all that's done. But NAW took a very hard stance at the way it's written right now. It's being looked at in many different states. Something I was just becoming aware of because there was a whole section on it that was discussed at the NAW Executive Forum, which was great. So basically, they were able to get an injunction. It says the injunction prevents Oregon's Department of Environmental Quality from enforcing the act against NAW members until the court rules on the merits. Here's the takeaway on this, right? And this is the EPR is Extended Producer Responsibility Law. So it's the responsibility you're having to take for recycling and so forth. What I thought was interesting and probably the most significant, I've probably in the last 12 months made 3 to 5 videos while I'm traveling to trade events from airports or hotel lobbies about my view of the importance of supporting your trade groups, the buying groups if you're partnered with. And it's more than just being part of a buying group, but you have organizations like the National Association of Wholesalers and Distributors, National Association of Manufacturers that are out working on behalf. This injunction only ties to NAW members. NAW filed this on behalf of their members. So this injunction that they were able to get is really, really interesting. So I just thought that was pretty cool to see that the value of, hey, you know what? Participate, because if you're in Oregon right now with this, pretty cool spot to be in.
Well, they got an injunction until the court rules on the general thing, right?
Right.
So
yeah. But everybody else has to deal with it still.
Sure.
Yep. So it's pretty cool. So anyways, that's kind of it. Our final second look, there was an article in there about tariff uncertainty related to the ports. Our second look segment of our newsletter that goes out every week is just usually some further data on conversations that we've had and discussed in depth in the past. And so from there. So anyways, we have a great read segment as well each week. Usually has something to do with leadership or development. The 6-pillar modern day leadership system is a good read if you get a chance to get the newsletter. And again, if you don't get the newsletter, please let us know. We'd be happy to get that to you. So Tom, closing thoughts on the day?
It'd be interesting. I was just sitting here thinking, are we really going to hear about the Supreme Court next Friday? What do you think? What are your predictions? Do you think we'll get
what does the Tom market say?
The Tom market says no. I don't think we will.
I'd agree.
I wish we would, but I wish this wouldn't drag out, but I don't think we'll get it.
Here's what I'm interested in. It's fun. I was just sharing this with my wife the other day. Interest rates, tariffs, Supreme Court, just were stuff flying at me in the news before we started doing this show. I hope people, get a benefit from the show. Obviously, we have lots of people coming consistently now for 3+ years, and the show continues to grow. So something is going right here, but great benefit for me. I've broadened my understanding of so much in the economy and so many different things. I know you knew all of these things before because, you're wiser than me, but I've learned a ton. And, I think the reason I say that is I think if we don't see something next week, or there isn't, and I don't think they're tied to any particular date that they have to, I believe they could make an announcement on this at a different date. They don't have to wait for something. But to your point, and I just give you credit for this from that research that you did, every day that drags out, this becomes much more intriguing. I mean, I could see if it drags out much further, this could be a couple of chapters within the legacy book that somebody writes about what happened with this administration with fentanyl and borders and the economy, certainly the economy component of it, because if they drag this out and out and out, there could almost be looked at, put it this way, they will be accused of probably, I don't want to say pandering is too big, but potentially dragging it out to see what is happening. Because right now, they could be looking at this to make a decision to say, well, let's give it 90 days, see what happens.
Maybe.
But it'll be interesting to watch. Is there, what would be the right term, Tom? It's not pandering to the administration, but maybe they're looking to see how things play out more to make a decision. I don't know what you would really call that, but I could see that happening through all of this now.
Well, we'll find out what happens next Friday. We'll let everybody know.
So what's the percentage likelihood?
20%.
20%. I could go along with that as well as I could argue it. It'll be interesting. What's your hope?
I would hope that they would actually come out and make an announcement on it. Okay. I think the longer this drags out is not good for anybody. So make some decisions and let's get this here and let's move on.
So a closing question on that, and I think you related this earlier, your feeling on this, but do you now that we see some results in the economy that there's benefit to the deficit and so forth from the tariffs, has it changed your position much of the likelihood of them striking this down?
No.
Okay.
No.
So the positive impact on the economy has nothing to do with what they're going to say.
Not at this point. I mean, not at this late in the game. It's not like they're going to change their tune this late in the game. They've already known there's been a.
Do you think their decision's already made?
I think it's predominantly made. I think there's a lot of nuance that is being worked out and how they phrase it and all that stuff. But hey, I have never been a member of the Supreme Court, so I don't know. Don't know anybody who has. So all right, let's wrap up. Let's let people get back to their life.
I love that. Good. I'll see you in 27 minutes in our next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for being with us. Again, Tom Burton, Kevin Brown, we get together every week and do this. Glad to have you with us. One parting question or favor to ask you again, if you like what you hear, enjoy what you're listening to, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share what we're doing with your friends, comment on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you might be listening. Certainly if you're with Apple or Spotify, most specifically Apple, hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. It would be a huge help to us. 5 stars, by the way, would be the way to do that ideally. We'll go from there. I think that would be great. And then in closing, again, our sponsor, Lead Smart Technologies, it's a company that Tom and I work for. If your company is struggling with siloed data across your organization that doesn't give you a clear view of what's going on in your organization, how to accelerate your growth and your revenues and your teams, and you're thinking about digitally transforming, we would love to share with you how we bring siloed data from across an organization into a single platform to help grow your business, make decisions from, and help your customers have a better experience with you by using what we define as smart CRM and aggregated data or unified data across the platform to use artificial intelligence and other tools to gain a better insight into your business. We'd love to share with you how we help wholesale distributors and manufacturers both grow their businesses. So on that note, Tom, wish you a great weekend. Everybody else the same. Be kind, be safe, do good things.